Hi, guys. Hope you're doing great. If you're having any technical issues or things, please let me know. Email me, send me a message or remind. Let me know how I can help you be more successful. Today, we are taking notes. I hope it was clear on how I did it. I gave you options. I polled my afternoon classes and asked them what they prefer, and they were all over the place. So I thought I would give it a shot and put all the options. So you have a Google Doc you can type in. There is a Google Slide. You can use the text boxes, or there is a PDF if you want to print it and write. Next week, we're going to look at all of our things and upload some of the different notes and things that you have done this week and next week for kind of a spiral grade. So hold on to those, whichever you chose, and we will pull those together. Okay, so I'm going to close the box and you can focus on the notes. If you have questions, reach out. Here we go. Okay, first thing about the notes. Don't worry about what to write just yet. Just listen, look at the pictures, and then I will have a slide that will show you exactly what I need you to write. Okay, so what we're talking about here is industrialization. We're talking about the transformation of our country from rural agricultural to industry. And in this time frame, we're going to have the growth of industry that's going to lead to a few individuals in our country being very, very rich. We'll refer to them as the haves and the have-nots. And the haves is a very small group. The have-nots, pretty big. Okay, so our first industry that we're going to look at today, here is a clue. It's hot, pouring. What do you think maybe's going on here? This is the steel industry. This is the Bessemer process. The Bessemer process you looked at in the window panes last week. The Bessemer process changed the game. In 1867, we made 2,000 tons of steel. In 1900, we made over 7 million tons of steel. This method made it where it was easier, cheaper, faster, and we produced a whole lot more steel. Because of that, we were able to build new things. Steel is stronger than iron. And because of steel, we're able to build things like a skyscraper. This one is in New York City, it's still there. I think it's called the Flatiron Building because it looks flat from different angles. It was built in 1901. It was 20 stories high. The very first skyscraper was actually built in Chicago in 1885. It was 13 stories high, I believe. We also were able to build things like this. You know what that is? That is the Brooklyn Bridge. Brooklyn Bridge was built in New York City. It opened in 1883. It was the longest suspension bridge in the world at that time. So in the entire world, it was the longest one. Its 16-inch steel cables supported a bridge 1,595 feet long. This became the symbol to the rest of the world that we were no longer farmers. We're no longer just agricultural. We are industrialists. We can build great things, and that's exactly what this is. Our key individual for the steel industry is a man by the name of Andrew Carnegie. You'll sometimes hear him in videos referred to as Carnegie. Either way, Andrew Carnegie was an immigrant. He came here as a young boy, and he worked in a textile mill, made about $1.20 a week. He realized the potential of the Bessemer process, and he took that potential and he got others to invest. And through those investments and all of his savings, he created the largest steel making plant in America, Homestead, Pennsylvania, the Homestead plant. Through this, he became one of the wealthiest men in America. He believed that the wealthy have a right to make money, but they also had a responsibility to spend it properly. He was a philanthropist, one of your key terms, one that gives to charity. He believed it was very important. Now, he was a little, one of his quotes, let's see, a millionaire is, quote, a trustee for his poor brethren, bringing to their service his superior wisdom, experience, and ability to administer, doing for them better than they would or could do for themselves. His heart is in the right place. But, all right, so this is what you are writing in your notes. The industry is steel. Your key person, Andrew Carnegie or Carnegie. Please put in parentheses here, vertical integration, one of your key terms. I'm going to talk about that in just a sec. And then these significant facts. The Brooklyn Bridge, the symbol of our transition from agricultural to industry. Bessemer process, it turns iron into steel. And skyscrapers transform cities. The cities are growing population-wise, and this gave us more space because we could no longer go out, we go up. If you need to pause so you can write, go ahead and pause the video, fill this into that chart, and then hit play. All right, talking about that vertical consolidation or vertical integration. It's the same word, but here's a visual for you. For Carnegie, he had the steel mills, I can't speak, but he also controlled the products that go into making steel, and he owned the things that the steel was used in. So all of the steps, the vertical aspect, so the things you need to make this product, and then you need this product to make these, he owned it all. That is a vertical consolidation or a vertical integration. All right, next industry. What do you see? That would be oil. We are talking about the oil industry. The first successful oil well was drilled in Titusville, Pennsylvania in 1859. When you think of oil, you don't generally think of Pennsylvania, but that was the first. But the question is, if I pull the oil out of the ground here, what's its value? Does it have value? Oil needs to be refined. In order for it to be used, as we think of oil, it has to go through a refining process. That's where our key individual comes in. This is John D. Rockefeller. Carnegie was taking over the steel industry. Rockefeller was doing the same in the oil business. His company was known as Standard Oil. He often used ruthless methods to eliminate competition. He would lower his prices really, really low to get a competitor's customers, and then he would raise the prices after they went out of business. He would go to companies and he would ask them to, he would go, I want to take over your business. Now, you can still own part of it, but I will get 70% and you will get 30%, and I will make all the decisions. And some people would say no, and he'd put them out of business. So then they started saying yes, and he created a trust, which then developed into a monopoly. If you look up some of the large oil companies of today, ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, they are tied to Standard Oil. They were once part of Standard Oil until that was broken into smaller pieces as we broke up monopolies. So for your chart for this one, you got oil. Key person is John D. Rockefeller. Standard Oil is his company. He had a horizontal integration or consolidation. I'll show you a picture in just a second. And the first successful oil well drilled in 1859. Pause so that you can write, and then hit play. All right. So for the vertical consolidation, it was all different kinds of businesses that used steel or the products that went into steel. For a horizontal consolidation or integration, it is just oil refineries. Rockefeller did not care about the oil in the ground, and he really didn't care what you did with it afterwards. But He's going to control all of the refineries, and sometimes in very ruthless ways. All right, next industry, railroad. Railroad's been around for a long time, but it kind of changed in the late 1800s. In 1860, with the Civil War, we had about 30,000 miles of track total, most of that in the east, and it wasn't connected. There was definitely a connection issue. Our key individual is Cornelius Vanderbilt. He bought up most of the railroad lines linking New York and Chicago. There were some that tried to hold out, and he, like Rockefeller, didn't really like that. He waited till winter, and basically, if that railroad wouldn't let him buy it, he then decided that anything on that railroad couldn't come onto his railroad. So they were just stuck in the cold of winter. At the time of his death, the New York Central, he's going to control about 4,500 miles of rail, and I'm going to show you a map here in just a second. Let me go ahead and show you that. This is part of what he controlled. So if you see, like, it connects New York, you're going into Ohio, Chicago, your industrial centers. Because of this increase in using the railroad, we also is this time frame that we're going to create the time zones. We needed efficient shipping. And up until this point, people would tell time. You'd have the city timekeeper, whatever, that would walk out, look up at the sun and go, yeah, it's noon. Well, with the transformation of the railroads from iron tracks to steel tracks, these trains are going faster and they're carrying more. And seconds can lead to crashes. So it is from the railroad that we create the time zones that we still currently follow. We live in the central time zone. But there's your time zone map. All right, so for this one, you've got key industry railroad, key person, Cornelius Vanderbilt. A little bit about how much he controlled, as well as time zones. Pause, right? All right, the last industry that we're looking at today, what do you see? Talking about banking, the banking industry. And for banking, our key individual is this guy right here, J.P. Morgan. James Pierpont Morgan. J.P. Morgan is now a bank, not a person, but it's from this guy. He was one of the most powerful bankers of his era. There are times in this time frame of history that he loans money to America. They go to him for money. The haves and the have-nots, he was definitely one of the haves in a very small group of individuals. For this one, you're going to write most powerful banker of his era. He financed railroads. He organized U.S. Steel and General Electric, what you know as GE. He stabilized American financial markets. Like I said, there was times they went to him for input, for money. These guys had a lot of power. These are the guys that built America. There's a series on the History Channel called Men That Built America, and it is a great series talking about just how much these guys controlled through their power. Now, the question is, were these guys good guys or were they bad guys? There's people that will argue both sides. Some say they are captains of industry, that they praised for their philanthropy, that these big corporations invented and perfected technologies that lowered the cost of products, that improved the quality of life for millions of Americans. Others argue that they were ruthless. They drove small companies out of business. They exploited their workers. They cut corners. They bought the government. The big monopolies they created overcharged for goods, created lack of competition, polluted the environment. For some of these guys, you could argue both. That they were good guys and bad guys. But either way, they controlled the major industries of the nation and much of American society. Okay, so I've added some notes to this of what I just talked about so that you can pause and fill in some key aspects into those boxes under Captains of Industry and Robber Baron. You don't have to write word for word. Summarize it to your notes so that you have an idea of the difference between a captain of industry and a robber baron. But understand, it could be perspective. Meaning if I worked at the Homestead plant, I may view Carnegie as a robber baron. But if I am involved in one of the charities of which he very much funds, I would say he's a captain. Okay, so these guys are really, 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 really rich, right? So you have the haves and the have-nots. Well, what is the justification for wealth? And apparently, I'm off my screen. Okay, so these guys kind of looked for a way to justify just how much money they had. One of those is social Darwinism, one of your key terms. This is known as survival of the fittest. If you were in class today, I would say from this point on, anytime I say social Darwinism, you are to say survival of the fittest. If I say survival of the fittest, you are to say social Darwinism. This is kind of using that law of the jungle, that it's preserve the strong in society and weeds out the weak. It's relating it to the lion is the strongest, the lion or the tiger, that big cat is the strongest, and it's the food chain. And this relieved any unwelcome guilt they may have felt about poverty in society, that they were the fittest. And that's the way it was. Now, some of these individuals didn't really, they just kind of found this distasteful, that idea of being compared to the animals, and they kind of chose a different method, and that was the gospel of wealth, or God's chosen. Carnegie definitely believed in the gospel of wealth. This is for those who found social Darwinism distasteful. And it gave a religious rationale for wealth, in that God chose them. They were chosen to be wealthy. Now, Carnegie takes this one step further by saying that society's fittest have both the talent and responsibility for deciding what was best for society. So, yes, God chose you to be rich, but it's because you have talent. And with that also comes responsibility. You've got to use it well. And that's where he brought in the philanthropy. All right, last topic we need to talk about is kind of how did these guys get so wealthy? Well, in this time frame, our country followed laissez-faire economics. The idea of laissez-faire is to let one do, meaning it's a hands-off approach. The government's proper role was to leave the economy alone. Don't touch it. Government's interference would disrupt the natural forces at work in the economy. So these guys were left to do whatever it was they needed to do. Ooh, that's another day. If you have questions, let me know. There is an exit ticket. Talk to you soon.